Dear learners, welcome to the MOOC on Population and Society. My name is Ashirvad Chakrabarty and I am a lecturer in the Department of Sociology at Guwahati University. Today, in this unit, we shall be discussing one of the primary indicators of population change, that is fertility. Now, if you have to mention the objectives of this particular module, the primary objective of the module is to revisit the significance of measuring birth and fertility. The second objective is understanding various methods to measure birth and fertility. And the third objective would be to have an empirical understanding of the indicator on a global and national scale. The study of population growth has consistently drawn the attention of scholars and policymakers, which has led to the development of demography as an essential area of study in social sciences. Now, demography can be defined as the scientific study of human populations, including their size, makeup, and fluctuations due to birth, deaths, and migration, in order to compare social, economic, and demographic differences between various groups of people. Demographers examine the makeup or characteristics of populations. Policymakers and others can make decisions regarding significant social, political, economic, as well as environmental issues with the assistance of an understanding of these demographic patterns and trends. The first 2 weeks of the course set the foundations of demographic studies, where we correlated demography to other social sciences, introduced fertility as well as birth as major variables in demographic studies. Understanding fertility rates and trends can aid in the formulation and assessment of population change policies. Additionally, examining fertility trends aids in predicting the demand for public services like schools and health centers. Generally, a census provides us with the useful information about fertility, even though other statistical platforms have become a source of gathering demographic data. The measurement of birth and fertility rates in a country is of significant importance for various reasons, providing crucial insights into the demographic, social, economic, and health characteristics of a particular population. Now, if you have to state the significance, you can see from the screen, the first significance is population structure. Birth and fertility rates are essential indicators of understanding population dynamics. They provide crucial information about the size and structure of a population, helping demographers and policymakers understand the nature of population change over time. The next significance is calculating population growth and decline. The birth rate directly influences population growth. A birth rate higher than the death rate naturally leads to population growth, while a birth rate lower than the death rate may result in population decline. These trends have profound implications for resource allocation, infrastructural planning, as well as overall societal development. The third significance is demographic transition analysis. The birth and fertility rates are critical components of the demographic transition model. As societies progress through different stages of development, understanding changes in birth rates indicate towards the changes in the reproductive behavior, social norms, and economic structures. The fourth significance is economic planning and labor force. The higher birth rates contribute to a larger labor force, which can be advantageous for economic development, assuming there are adequate opportunities for employment and skill development. Conversely, lower birth rates may lead to an aging population, impacting labor availability and productivity. Next is the healthcare planning. Monitoring birth rates is crucial for healthcare planning, especially in terms of maternal and child health services. High birth rates may be required, increase access to prenatal and postnatal care, family planning services, and facilities for safe deliveries. Sixth is resource allocation and education. The birth and fertility rates influence resource allocation in areas such as education. Higher birth rates may put a strain on education systems, necessitating the increased investment in schools and teachers. Understanding fertility rates helps policymakers plan for future educational needs. 7 is the family planning programs. The governments used birth and fertility rate data to design and implement family planning programs. China's one-child policy or India's previous policy of Hum Do Hamare Do are very good examples. These programs aim to provide reproductive health services, education, and access to contraceptives. It allows individuals and couples to make informed decisions about family size and spacing. The birth and fertility rates are vital inputs for the formulation of various policies, including those related to social welfare, employment, as well as housing. Understanding demographic trends help the government in developing strategies that align with the evolving needs of their population. Finally, comparing birth and fertility rates across countries provides a basis for understanding global demographic patterns. It allows for the identification of factors that may contribute to variations in reproductive behavior and informs international cooperation on issues such as population health and development. Now, the quantitative framework of doing demography brings us to the first indicator of population dynamics, which is fertility of any country, the crude birth rates. Birth rate, also known as natality, is the number of live births per 1,000 of mid-year population, that is, the estimated population of a region in the middle of the year. The World Heritage Organization has renamed and relabeled this particular indicator as crude birth rate, something very vague, rudimentary, something very rough. The reason being that even though birth rate is a very simple indicator, it is unsatisfactory in nature. Since the total population is not exposed to childbearing or pregnancy, birth rates do not present the complete picture. It also fails to consider the age structure of the population. Nonetheless, this is an important parameter when other parameters of rates are not available to compare the fertility of two different countries or regions. As we can see from the visuals, the mathematical formula for crude birth rate can be expressed as the ratio of number of live births in a year within a region to the estimated mid-year population. Let us take an example to understand this particular crude birth rate. Now, suppose in the year 2010, a city had 2,500 live births in a year, with its estimated mid-year population, that is the population estimated in the middle of that year, as 2,25,000. Now the crude birth rate would come out to be 11.1. This means that for every 1,000 people in the city, there were 11.1 births. Now according to the Indian census of 2011, India had a crude birth rate of 21.8. For rural India, the figure was 23.3, whereas urban India projected a crude birth rate of 17.6, which meant that more number of babies were born in rural parts of India than compared to the different tier cities. The rural birth rate, interestingly, was even higher than the national average, which then becomes important vantage points for social science researchers. Now, as you can see from the table, the Central Bureau of Health Intelligence in India reported an estimated birth rate until 2016, where the CBR or the crude birth rate of India dropped to 20.4. The Bureau referred to a report of the Technical Group on Population Projections, which was supervised by the National Commission on Population, suggested that this figure would plummet down to 16 by the year 2025. On a global context, as we can see from the figures, the average birth rate in the year 2021 has been 17. We can also see the distribution of birth rates across various countries in the globe, where the African continent has had a high amount of CBR, suggesting, even though vaguely, that the population in African countries relatively increase at a much higher rate than others. Countries like Niger and Somalia are at the top with crude birth rates as high as 45 and 44 respectively. Higher birth rates can be attributed to cultural as well as physical reasons, ranging from traditions and customs of early marriage to issues of early puberty and absence of planning or education. The map also signifies for a demographer or a social scientist about the large difference in population growth and the overall approach towards procreation between the developed, developing and underdeveloped countries. The pictorial representation perhaps then opens large number of academic questions around economy, polity and culture in these different societies. Next is the general fertility rate. The general fertility rate, or the GFR, is the simplest measure of fertility. The main advantage of calculating GFR is that it is more inclusive and accurate than the crude birth rate. The reason is that it takes into consideration only the female population who are in their reproductive age. This exposure to the risk of pregnancy makes this indicator more precise. This measure is generally used in population projection using the component projection method. Now, what is a component projection method? In the context of population projection, the term component projection method typically refers to a demographic modeling approach. that involves projecting population changes based on the individual components of population change. In terms of births, the method projects future births by considering factors such as fertility rates, age-specific birth rates, and other relevant demographic information. As you can see from the screen, the general fertility rate can be calculated by finding out the ratio between the number of live births during the year, which is represented by B, over the mid-year number of female population in their reproductive years. Now usually the reproductive age is considered to be between 15 to 45. Now the major drawback of this particular approach is that not every female from the reproductive age group in that population would be exposed to the event of pregnancy. It is not necessary that the sample would be at a stage or condition to bear children. This issue is, however, mitigated by calculating the general marital fertility rate, the GMFR. The general marital fertility rate refers to the total number of live births for every 1,000 married women in the reproductive age group within a specific year. As you can see on your screen, the formula is quite similar to the GMR. However, here FP stands for married women in the reproductive age bracket. The next measure is the age-specific fertility rate. The age-specific fertility rate is another indicator that is used by the demographers for specific data interpretation. This is a more accurate measurement that shows the fertility pattern and family planning success. Now it can be defined as the ratio of the number of live births to women of a specific age group to the mid-year female population from that particular age group. The interesting part of this rate is that the female population occupying the denominator applies only to married women. That is, the ratio is against every 1,000 married female population of that particular age group. As you can see on your screen, the age-specific fertility rate, or the ASFR, can be expressed as B upon FMP, where B is the number of live births to women of a specific age group during a year, and FMP is the mid-year married female population in that particular age group. Now the reason we have multiplied it with 1,000 is because it is calculated for every 1,000 mid-year married female population of a particular age group. Now what is the significance of measuring ASFR? Why do we measure the age-specific fertility rates? The first significance is reproductive behavior analysis. The ASFR allows demographers and researchers to analyze how fertility rates vary across different age groups. This information is vital for understanding the reproductive behavior of a population and identifying trends in family planning and childbearing decisions. The next significance is policy planning and family programs. Governments and policymakers use age-specific fertility rates and the data from that to design effective family planning programs and policies. By identifying age groups with high or low fertility rates, authorities can tailor interventions to address specific demographic challenges. Third is the population projection. The ASFR is a key input in population projection models. By incorporating fertility rates for various age groups, demographers can forecast future population growth and structure, helping societies plan for healthcare, education, and other essential services. Fourth, evaluating societal changes. The changes in age-specific fertility rates over time reflect societal shifts, including changes in attitudes towards family size, education, and workforce participation. Understanding these changes is crucial for anticipating the evolving needs of a population. The next measure of fertility is the total fertility rate, is the fourth measure of fertility. The total fertility rate, or the TFR, estimates the average number of children that a woman may have if she carries through her entire reproductive cycle and experiences the age-specific fertility rates that are currently common in the wider population. It is calculated by adding the annual fertility rates for each group between 15 and 45. Now, because age-specific rates are typically provided for intervals of 5 years, the rates within an interval must be multiplied by 5. As you can see on your screen, the formula is summation of all the age-specific fertility rates multiplied by the age interval, where ASFR in each 5-year age-specific birth rate is expressed as the ratio of number of live births to mothers aged X to the number of mid-year resident women aged X. As you can see on the screen, ASFR can be expressed as Bx upon Px, where Bx is the number of live births to mothers aged X and px is the number of mid-year resident women aged x. Now the difference between the total fertility rate and the general fertility rate is that the former represents births per woman over the course of her lifetime, whereas the latter indicator represents births per 1,000 women annually. Now it should be noted that the approximate magnitude of the complete family size is provided by the total fertility rate. The World Bank suggested that the average total fertility rate of the world, which was per woman in 2021, was 2.3, while countries like Niger and Somalia led the charts with 6.8 and 6.3 respectively. Hong Kong and Korea Republic had the worst fertility rates. In Indian context, as you can see from the table, the numbers suggest that its fertility rates in 2021 were 2.03, whereas its South Asian counterparts such as Pakistan was at 3.47, Bangladesh at 1.98, Sri Lanka at 1.99, Nepal at 2.03, and Bhutan at 1.41. Now, why do we calculate the TFR? Why do we need total fertility rates? The first reason could be that population growth and replacement, because TFR is a key determinant of population growth. A TFR of around 2.1 is considered the replacement level, which means that each generation replaces itself. Now if a country has a total fertility rate below this level, populations may decline, while above it, the population tends to show a growth in ascendancy. The next reason could be demographic transition. TFR is integral to understand demographic transition phases. Societies typically experience a decline in TFR as they transition from high to low fertility rates, accompanied by changes in social, economic, and cultural factors. Third is the policy planning and allocation of resources. Now governments and policymakers, they rely on the TFR data to formulate policies related to healthcare, education, and social welfare. The TFR informs decisions about allocating resources, considering the expected population growth and composition. The TFR influences a nation's economic structure as well, which is represented in the fourth reason, as high fertility rates may produce strain over the country's reservoir of resources and capacitated services, while low rates can lead to an aging population and potential labor force shortages. Understanding TFR aids in planning for a balanced and sustainable workforce. The fifth measure of fertility is the adolescent fertility rate. The adolescent fertility rate is another indicator for the social science researchers and policymakers to gather, measure, and focus upon. With larger social implications, quantitative analysis of childbirth at an early age has become a significant measure of the population dynamics of a region. The AFR is calculated as the number of births per 1,000 women who are aged between 15 and 19. The adolescent fertility rates are indicative of broader societal challenges and inequalities that the policymakers and the governments face. Addressing these rates require a multifaceted approach, combining educational, healthcare, and policy intervention. At the grassroots level, the semi-periphery and peripheral countries rely on AFR to pursue reformative goals. The quantitative data from United Nations Population Division in World Population Prospects shows that the adolescent fertility rates per 1,000 women was 42. As you can see from the table, countries like Niger had an AFR of 170, followed by Mozambique at 166, who were leading the global charts. India, on the other hand, projected an adolescent fertility rate of 17.23 for the year 2021. Countries like Hong Kong, Norway, and Denmark have the least adolescent fertility rates. The next measure is the gross reproduction rate. Now another measure of fertility is the GRR, which represents the average number of daughters that will be born to a woman over her lifetime, assuming that she experiences the age-specific fertility rates observed in a given year. In other words, it is an extension of the total fertility rate and is more gender-specific in nature. In Indian context, the current fertility rate according to macro trends in 2023 is 2.139 births per woman, which was a 0.93% decline from 2022. Mathematically, as you can see from the image, the gross reproduction rate is expressed as the sum of the ratios of the number of female births to women of age X during a specified period to the number of person years lived by women of age X during that same period. The summation is typically carried out over reproductive ages, often starting at age 15 and continuing until the highest reproductive age, which is usually considered to be 45 to 50. Now, what do the numbers mean in terms of the gross reproduction rate? A GRR value greater than 1 indicates that, on average, each woman is having more than one daughter, which implies population growth. A GRR less than 1 suggests a declining population if sustained over a long term. Now, if the GRR is equal to 1, it means that the female population is replacing itself from one generation to the next, and there is no net increase or decrease in population size due to fertility alone. This is sometimes referred to as the replacement level as well. However, it is important to note that the gross reproduction rate does not consider mortality and assumes that all females at reproductive age survive to the end of their reproductive years. Next, we have the net reproduction rate, which is the final measure of measuring birth and fertility. The net reproduction rate represents the average number of daughters that would be born to a woman over her lifetime, which takes into account the mortality rates at each age. Unlike the gross reproduction rate, the NRR considers the probability of survival to each age, acknowledging that not all females will survive to reproductive age. It provides a more realistic assessment of the reproductive potential of a region with a more boundaried approach. Now, to sum up, the measurement of birth and fertility rates is a fundamental aspect of demographic analysis, offering valuable insights that inform policy decisions, healthcare planning, and societal development strategies. These rates provide a lens through which societies can understand and respond to the challenges and opportunities presented by their changing population structures. In the next module, we shall discuss another indicator of population change, which is mortality, and look at it under a quantitative framework. Thank you.